Hi class, I'll be discussing the continuation of our lesson 2 regarding the Rizal Law, Literature and Society. So, as a review, especially for those who have missed our previous session, we are having this class because of the mandate given by the Rizal Law or the Republic Act 1425. So, please take note of that. So, this act mandated the inclusion in the curriculum in all the public and private schools, colleges, and universities courses on the life, works, and writings of Jose Rizal. And this law also mandated that the Nole Me Tangere, El Filibusterismo, along as with his other works, will be um, read, especially during the discussion and of course in your personal reflection. And why is it there is there is an importance as to having this specific law. So there is a need to give utmost importance to the ideals of freedom, nationalism, and patriotism through the understanding of the works and life of Dr. Jose Rizal. And it is also established that the schools, among other institutions in society, are in the best position to carry out the compulsory course on Rizal, especially in college, where you are all expected to have higher level of understanding and that you will be reading his works not just on its literal implication, but you will also reflect what had happened before and see what lessons we can draw out for it and from it, especially in our present times. So, as a review, we also discussed that literature is a reflection of the society. It tells a lot about how our country is doing, how we are making decisions, what are our values and priorities. So, through it, the society can realize its mistakes and then make amends. So, it can also show the different virtues that we have, the good values in the society for the people to emulate or follow. That's why it is also said that literature is the imitation of human action. So, from the words being weaved by the author, we can see a lot of realities and it also portray the different human emotions. Last time, I also asked you to answer this question. What is the relationship between literature and society? And how does one learn patriotism and nationalism from literature? These are actually questions which you will better answer as we go along with this course because you will have your own um, reflection as to how the different events in the novel at the same time in the life in the real life of Rizal can also make you appreciate the freedom that we have right now at the same time show your great love for the country. So, according to the literary analysis of Caroline is how there's also a need for us to answer how do Rizal's novel would teach patriotism? What would reading the novels enable the reader to grasp? And why is there learning of patriotism from those or from these novels? And the process of acquiring such learning is, of course, not automatic. That's why it is also said that it is a complicated process. And in drawing out from the readings, it is also expected that there are instances in which you can have your different interpretation as part, of course, of the premise that although we are reading the same material, we could have different experiences, and at the same time, we already have our own judgment and we are also having different realities. So we may not really see things in the same way, but it is hope that we will all see through the process of reading his works and then reflecting on the life of Rizal, the importance of loving the country, and at the same time, the moral obligation that we all have. It is important that we consider that the novel of Rizal is a piece of literature. That's why, being a piece of literature, if you can still remember what we said about the definition of literature, it is also a way of telling us more about the realities in the past or from the past. What events are deemed important by the people before, and what are the different oppression that they had experienced in the told in a more creative manner. So the literature that were presented, the type of events, would also lead us to have a deeper understanding of what we are usually studying in our history class. That the events that had happened is not just about the events per se, but they bring with them series of feelings among people, the the level of sacrifices, and how from those let's say tragic or difficult events or series of injustice, the feelings of love for country had set forth or had been felt by people, specifically by our heroes, one of whom was, of course, Jose Rizal. As a literature, you as a student, and of course, as we are journeying in this together, would have to situate ourselves to the novel, the situation, and the characters. So do not just take the events as they are, but we have to always ask ourselves why those events happened, or why is it that those words were mentioned by the characters. So they are the representation of the Philippine social reality in that um, period of our history. So it's important that we read the Philippine literature in the context of the reality in that time. So the nationalistic content and realistic detection is important. So that's why the intervention of the tradition, or the realistic intervention in the tradition, should also be considered. So when you example, when you have seen events in relation to the practice of faith at that time, so you have to um, look at the situation on the what had happened before, so that the events will not just be seen as part of the history, but that they really have effects in the people, and it also affected some aspects of our culture, which some of those aspects are still true up to now. And if we teach history in truthful manner, we develop that sense of nationalism and patriotism. It is the reason why Rizal also annotated the work of Morga and the truth exposition of the Philippine society in his novel. That's why even in the beginning of Nole Me Tangere, he specifically mentioned about the type of illness at that time that is happening to the Philippines. He referred to it as a country with cancer because of some characters of the people, their actions, and their decisions had caused negative effects to the country. And if we will not address the problem in its roots, it will really cause more damages. We hope that in the process of reading the the literary works of Rizal, we get to appreciate the content and the situation, especially during the time the novel was written. So it's a kind of looking back in the history. Although, for example, it is somehow very much or easier in the present to express what we feel, to give critics as to the choices and the actions of our leaders, to express our thoughts. In the present, we can simply post them in our social media accounts. That's the reality in the present. But to appreciate the the fact that at that time Rizal was able to expose the realities of the Philippines during that period. It was already a very brave act for a young um, leader to do. So it's not the reality in the present is not the same before. So it is not easy before to speak about the truth. It is not very much, or it's not that usual for someone to speak about the um, opinion as to how the country is being run. So when we read the content and the situation, we have to consider the realities at the time the novel was written. So there is also that danger or hazard in translation, which we have to be also mindful about. The tendency that if we just simply translate the original version, that there is the tendency to lose the true meaning along the way, or we may have the different interpretation, we may grasp different meaning, or there could be biases in terms of relating it with the actual situation, and we would create the comparison. That's why there will be more than one interpretation. That's why when we study the different works of Rizal, we have to understand what is the reality before so that the context that we are getting is correct. But of course, it doesn't mean that we will not relate it with the present. So the value of what had happened before will be better appreciated if we will reflect it with our present realities as well. So the the learning that we can draw out from it so that the what had happened, the lessons that they are teaching us, especially as young Filipinos, and for the entire country in general, will not be put into waste, given the fact that we have a lot of heroes. And when I speak of heroes, these are not just the people that we know, because in reality, they become heroes because there are also a lot of other people who help them. So it's a work of many other brave Filipinos whom we may not know, whom are not really given that recognition, but whose same love for the country are worthy of emulation. And we have to consider them as well, their sacrifices for the country, so that we get to appreciate more the kind of freedom that we are um, experiencing in the present, their sacrifices. And in the process, we hope to find the truth from his works and from what had happened in his life and the life of his family and the people he came across with. So it's important as well to ensure that the translation will be truthful in words and in action. There is that term of excess in literature, which means that there are heterogeneous elements, that there are that people or the kind of reference which is not based on one person. So we have to consider that the attempts to understand the context of the Philippine society at the time could also be affected by the political error, by the biases, at the same time, the complex realism in the Philippine society. So, the it is, although we're trying to study the society, it is not um, it's not a topic that could just be simply understood with just one way of thinking. It is dangerous to impose one level of understanding society because it's complex at the same time. The diversity of the people comprising of society will also be put at risk if we ask people to look at and to apply just one way of thinking in all aspects. So while we are leading or while through this class, we will be leading you to think towards patriotism, nationalism, and other topics. It is also not really meant to stop you from having your other sets of realizations. It is expected that along the way, as you allow yourselves to read um, what had happened, you will also have your own level of aha moments or understanding of what had happened before. So let that curiosity um, be nourished in you, your own pace. So, in relation to the novel of Rizal, there are many colonial aspects which are not mentioned or stated in the novel, and they are excess in literature. When they are not stated, it doesn't mean that they did not happen. So, it's important to start developing that lens of looking at the situation as well on its macro level. It does not depict the entire indigenous communities to cover the presentation of people in the story. So it doesn't mean that we'll have absolute conclusion towards the end, but but we can also see the different characters who are actually representation of two people and what had happened to them, whom they are representing, what are the different social issues that they were facing at the same time, their personal issues, and how can we draw out solutions. Especially, there could also be some aspect in the novel which we can say that the type of problems that were revealed are still true up to the present. And it's something that would also um, make us somehow, for me, on a personal level, those should bother us in a good way because, for instance, if the experience of corruption as a reality in the Philippines is being um, told or shared that time in the novel, which had happened years and years and years ago, then it's really a sad reality to have the same level of problem coming into different shapes and of course degree or means in the present. So the concept of having old age problem is giving me that sense of have of certain sadness because it's something that the present generation should reflect upon so that we do not pass on the same level of problem in the next generation or would even make the situation worse. That's why on my own reflection while having this subject before when I was in college, it made me see that there is really a need for us to think about the future, the kind of world that we are living to the next generation. That we do not just live the here and now and for our own sake, but the present that we have are also the opportunities for us to be able to contribute something good for the future. So you may also have the same or another level of interpretation as you go along this subject. So although this is mandated by the law, I hope that you will not feel that this is something that you just have to go through as a mere obligation as a student or for the sake of passing the subject. But I hope that through this, you'll be able to discover your role as Filipinos at the same time, your capacity as young people. Rizal would always speak good things about the young, about the youth. So with it comes that level of trust and of course confidence in your ability to do something more for the present and for the future. So along the way, you can reflect on your own. How do this excess would limit literature and complicate the learning of patriotism from the novel, but at the same time would also make you see that there are still so much more about the Philippine culture and about Filipinos, the written and the unwritten. That the truth is not entirely based on what's in the book. We know that even up to the present there are some questions as to the truth in some of the things that we were made to believe in the Philippine history, in the lives of our heroes. So you have to continue to be critical about what we are passing through, about what we are believing. So you cannot expose the reality to move for social transformation with the presence of excess. But it doesn't mean that you stop yourself from appreciating what's in there. It's only a matter of being mindful that there are still a lot of realities that may not be presented, but it should not stop you to um, explore at the same time. It doesn't mean that what you know has no value. So let me end with discussing the definition of patriotism and nationalism, although these two words are being defined in different manner, their definition are actually intertwined. It's coming from the same level of um, showing our love for a country. So when we say patriotism, it's about our national pride. It's the feeling of love, devotion, that sense of attachment to a homeland, and of course, the alliance with other citizens who share the same sentiment. Because whether we like it or not, the fact that we are all Filipinos would also give us a lot of common things, specifically common issues that we can solve together because we have the same um, experience of it. And that level of attachment can be a combination of the many different feelings relating to our homeland. And that would include the ethnic, the cultural, the political, or the historical aspects. And lastly, the nationalism, that idea and the movement that promotes the interest of a particular nation as in a group of people, especially with the aim of gaining and maintaining self governance over its homeland. So it's the sense of nationalism that would lead us to do something. So when it's the patriotism that would give us that level of devotion, it's the nationalism that would make us act on it, coming from the belief and the perspective that the people must protect its own ability to govern itself, that it is the nation which has the only rightful source of power, and it further aims to build and maintain that single national identity, although it doesn't mean that you care less about what's happening in the world, because after all, we're living in the same world. So that sense of national unity or solidarity are to be promoted if we are to inculcate the sense of nationalism or love for country. So, lastly, let me leave you with this beautiful quote from Rizal. While a people preserves its language, it preserves the marks of liberty. Because through the literary works of Rizal, through the language that we had really attempted or to preserve and to pass on to the next generation through education, we can also take care and appreciate more the liberty that we have. And we hope to give that sense of liberty to the next generation, to protect it in the present with all our might and with all our love for the country. So thank you so much, class, and have a great weekend.